All right, meanwhile, President Trump huddling up with top national security advisors after revealing that he is pausing a major attack on Iran.
Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with the latest for us. Trey?
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Look, the clock is still ticking. President Trump giving Iran a few more days to get their act together. The president posting on Truth Social overnight that he had planned to attack Iran, but he's holding off at the request of Gulf leaders. He said in part on Truth Social, I've instructed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Daniel Kane, and the United States military, that we will not be doing the scheduled attack of Iran tomorrow, but have further instructed them to be prepared to go forward with a full large-scale assault of Iran on a moment's notice in the event that an acceptable deal is not reached. The timeline here remains the biggest question. The Israeli military remains on high alert, and the U.S. military buildup across the region is growing each day. President Trump indicated this is a temporary pause to see if an agreement can be reached.
I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also.
The Iranians released a few statements overnight with the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, saying dialogue does not mean surrender, and a senior Iranian official, Mohsen Razi, attacking President Trump on X, saying he sets a deadline for a military attack and then canceled it himself, with the false hope that he will surrender the Iranian nation and officials, the iron fist of the powerful armed forces, and the great nation of Iran will force them to retreat and surrender. Still a lot of tough talk from the Iranians overnight and questions about how long this temporary pause could last. Guys?
So, Trey, if you look at who's the clock ticking for? Is it Iran as gas lines build up and their economic strife goes? Continues to gather steam, or is it the U.S. who wants to get this done before the World Cup, before the Celebration 250, let alone the midterms in November? Where do you think more pressure is?
More pressure is certainly on Iran at the moment due to the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports that is crippling the Iranian economy. We talked about those numbers yesterday. Exports for the regime are down 90% from pre-war levels, and they are currently at a 50% rate of crude oil extraction. Their economy is in a dire situation as a result of this U.S. pressure. And so the president has some strategic patience here to play with. And it's not surprising that these Gulf countries have asked for a few more days, given the fact that if a large-scale war does resume, these countries just along the Persian Gulf are going to take extremely heavy incoming fire, and a lot of their energy infrastructure supports the entire world. We have to remember here that President Trump knows a lot of information that the public doesn't know, and he is playing more than even 4D chess with the Iranians, understanding that the Iranians are often the ones with this threatening language, and it's a tough talk that the president understands Iran gets. They are in a region where they are constantly threatening Gulf allies and U.S. allies like Israel, and the president is beating them at their own game. And so we're likely looking at a situation where this pause is certainly temporary to see if they can get a deal across the finish line that is acceptable to U.S. negotiators. And if they can't, the president has promised this war will resume.
So, Trey, did the Gulf states do this because they're worried about the incoming fire, or do they really do it because they think a deal is close?
It's a good question, and the analysis here is challenging because a lot of these Gulf countries actually stepped back from the negotiating table. Previously, you had countries like Qatar that were directly involved in these conversations, but given the fact that the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Saudis, and Bahrain and other Gulf countries were coming under direct attack from Iran, it was challenging for them to reach some sort of settlement or even be involved in the process with the Iranian regime. And the president, about a month ago, told me he was most surprised by the fact that these countries were coming under attack. We know that there are serious fields of oil and also the liquefied natural gas production in places like Qatar that the Iranians have threatened to target if the war does resume. And so this is all part of the ongoing calculation, not just for President Trump, but also his Gulf allies. And remember, the coordination between these Gulf allies and the United States is at the highest level it's ever been, because these Gulf countries trust the American negotiators. They've worked very closely with Special Envoys Kushner and Witkoff in the past, and when messages are delivered to them behind the scenes, they take them at face value.
So, Trey, from my understanding, from my sources, the National Security Team met last night. and gave the president a list of options. Is it your understanding from your sourcing that although the president delayed today's attack, it could happen at any moment? Any moment that he feels like the negotiation is done and they're not operating in good faith, the Iranians, that the president is ready to go, all the assets are positioned correctly?
Yes, absolutely. This could kick off at any moment if the president sees there is no serious deal on the table. And these Gulf countries will be updated about that, understanding that they will likely come under direct attack from the Iranian regime. I've been talking with regional sources over the past 24 hours, and many of them have been quite silent about what comes next, because there is a lot of very serious intelligence behind the scenes. And again, the United States and Israel are not going to project to the Iranian regime what their plans are. They want to catch them by surprise, understanding that Iran still poses a threat to U.S. forces and allies across the Middle East. So again, what President Trump knows and what he says publicly are two different things. And the United States and Israel remain prepared for the possibility that this bombing campaign resumes.
All right. Thanks so much, Trey. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trey.
And also during our show yesterday, Pakistanis sent a whole unit over to Saudi Arabia, 8,000 troops, so including some fighter jets, because they have a military pact. So the UAE gets the Iron Dome from Israel. Saudi Arabia is getting help from Pakistan. Pakistan is still looked at as a mediator with Iran and us. So there's a lot of moving parts. But I think people are getting in place to maximize defense in order to neutralize Iran's offense. And also, I hope we went the extra mile to secure our bases that were hit 220 times during the last few weeks.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.